Hello, everyone. I'm Sandy Rosenthal, host of Beat the Big Guys, and I'm so excited about my guest today. His name is Ken McCarthy, and one of the foremost pioneers of the movement to commercialize the internet in the early 1990s. Welcome, Ken.
Hi, thanks.
Oh, I'm so excited. I really think this is one of the most important, or the most important episode of my first season, where I talk to people about things they shouldn't be afraid of, things that they allow to stop themselves from taking on the big guys in their community or town. Many of the things people do online every day to promote their businesses and causes were innovations that started with Ken McCarthy, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them right now. The things he did include using email for promotional messages, pre-programmed sequential email autoresponders, banner ads, and audio, and then video ads. Time magazine credits Ken McCarthy with inventing the idea of the click-through rate, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. Rick Boyce is the first person in history to sell banner ads in meaningful volume and was introduced to that concept directly by Ken McCarthy. Additionally, and this is where I am very familiar, Ken's behind the scenes contributions as a strategist, tactician, and copywriter have been the secret weapon behind the success of many what otherwise would have been hopeless causes, including overturning the result of a fraudulent 250 million bond referendum in San Francisco, stopping the plan to build North America's second largest cement plant on the banks of the Hudson River in New York, and third, and I'm very familiar with this myself, helping the nonprofit group levees.org navigate the countless strategic and communications challenges that we faced from the federal government over the past 14 years. This is an important episode of my first season. This is dedicated to convincing that would-be citizen leader that they have nothing to fear. And one of the things that we'll discuss today is the fear that money, not having enough money or not having enough resources to fight the big guys who have deep pockets and fat wallets. You don't have to worry about that, and we're going to talk about that today. So hello, Ken, and welcome.
Hello.
So,
thanks for having me.
Oh, I am very excited about what we're going to talk about today. I'd like to start with talking about one of probably the greatest things in history in my mind, in doing great things with just a little bit of money or almost no money, is, Ken, remember the time that a PR firm offered to do a promotion for us during the Republican National Convention, right when Sarah Palin had been invited to be vice president with John McCain? And a PR company said for $10,000, we can do a promotion during the Republican convention, and you had a better idea. And
yeah. What I was able to do back then was circumstantial. In other words, the conditions that allowed me to do that particular thing don't exist anymore. But what I did then was I made sure that we had a video. I wrote the script and produced a video called The Katrina Myth.
mm-hmm.
And I made sure that it was in the top 10 news videos for all of YouTube during the Democratic convention, in between, and during the Republican convention, so that anybody that went to look at news on YouTube during either of those conventions or in between and wanted to see what was going on in America, it was 9 videos about the convention and 1 video about New Orleans. So that would take I don't even know how much money you would need to be able to pull that off today, but that was an opportunity that was available then. I saw it and I took it. And that's a big part of how I operate, which is I don't have any formulas for anybody. I don't have any secret tricks, but I do have a viewpoint, an outlook, and a philosophy about how I do what I do. So if we want to talk about that, I can talk about that in super detail, technicolor.
Sure. I'm really glad I took a screen grab of YouTube on the day that for 3 days, not just one day, for 3 days, our video, the Katrina myth, was in
3
the
weeks.
top.
I'm sorry to interrupt. 3 weeks.
It was 3 weeks.
We dominated YouTube news for 3 weeks. And again, that was sort of doable back then. Now you'd need an army, but we had some tricks up our sleeve. Yeah.
We took advantage of the tools that were available at that time. And now there are new tools available, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that today. But the bottom line is there are free and inexpensive tools available that you can use that the citizen activist just doesn't have access to. Oh, sure, if you're Coca-Cola, yes, you have PR firms at your fingertips that can and will charge you an awful lot of money to do some of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Well, also, you had a conversation based on my suggestion with James Carville, who's one of the top PR practitioners in the US living today. And he was stunned at what levies.org was able to accomplish with such really, I guess we can reveal it now, a pretty small base, pretty small infrastructure. And you could have given James Carville $50 million, and I don't think he could have done what levies.org did, frankly. So it has little to do with money. Money's always helpful, but it's not going to solve your problems. And yes, people in the PR industry will take an infinite amount of money from you. What they'll actually accomplish is another story.
Right, they may not even deliver. Yeah. Another thing that I've found, and I'm sure other citizen activists, is big companies with fat wallets often do very stupid things. And it's easy to highlight those stupid things in a 1-minute video that you can shoot with your iPhone and put it on the internet. But
yeah, I mean, the good thing about the other side, I mean, the reality is the other side has tremendous resources, financial, social, political. They often have the news media in their pockets. They often have all the local politicians in their pockets. But generally, they're staffed by clock punchers. And these are people who get paid whether they succeed or not. So ultimately, they don't really care that much as long as they get their paycheck and their pension and they don't lose their job. Whereas when we're dealing with something like New Orleans, fighting for its survival to get proper levees built, Hudson, making sure that it wasn't turned into an industrial sacrifice zone, those people are fighting for their lives. So I'd rather work with people that are fighting for their lives than a bunch of clock punchers.
These PR firms may charge a lot of money, but they don't have a heart like the people that you're trying to save.
They're in the business of getting a fee and punching the clock. And I'm going to say this, like doctors, like lawyers, if you die, the doctor still gets paid. If you go to jail, the lawyer still gets paid. They do their best, but they don't work that hard.
I think the old term is there's no skin in the game.
No, exactly. There's no skin, but they're paid.
But they get paid.
And that's with the PR people too. So I would recommend not working with PR people, frankly.
No, I completely understand. They get paid no matter what. So is there anything else that you can offer to the would-be citizen, the citizen who sees a problem in their community and wishes they could do something, but they think they don't have fat pockets and big wallets?
Well, people sometimes get stuck when they see something that looks impossible or hopeless. And so, you could define a situation by saying, well, the other side, I mean, and this was the case in New Orleans, and this was the case in Hudson, and this was the case in San Francisco. And in every case, the entire political establishment and all the news media were lined up against the population. In every case, these were absolutely hopeless situations. They should not have. Done deals. Yeah, done deals, absolutely. Absolutely. They should not have succeeded. They should not have had a prayer. So step one is you just cannot allow yourself to say that something's impossible or undoable or hopeless. I have for whatever reason, maybe it's my life experience. They say one time is a accident, second time's a coincidence, the third time is concerted action. For whatever reason, I don't see impossibility. So you've got it. That's probably the first place that you've got to work. if you're building up the case that you can't win, well, you can't win. So you have to build up the case that you can win. And the problem is, people are aware of the levies.org story, and now that your book is out, that will help. But there really hasn't been a lot of press about the fact that a very, very small organization led by one person counteracted a multi-million-dollar sinister PR campaign by the federal government, by a branch of the that really hasn't been promoted. And I can tell you, when we stopped that cement plant, which was one of the biggest environmental victories in United States history, that was not promoted. So people aren't getting the story about the fact that, yes, you actually can win in, quote, impossible circumstances. Every one of these operations started with very few people and no particular resources and no particular strategic advantage. The strategic advantage you have, again, is that the people involved really, really care because their survival's at stake. One of the first things, I recommend this to everybody, is think in terms of building an organization. And what is an organization? It means something with members. Ideally paying members, because you will need resources at some point, but any kind of members you can get, build up your mailing list, because all this boils down at the end of the day to a dog fight, or a street fight. Really is better as a street fight. It's how many people can you show up with? I mean, that's usually how these things work out. So by focusing on building your organization, a lot of things take place. Number one, you focus on your message, because it's your message that's going to attract people. So you need to be in the business of crafting your messages and publishing them routinely. Like, you can't just put up a flyer or mail a postcard once or declare one meeting. I mean, this, as you know, Sandy, this part of it is relentless. It takes.
And if I could elaborate, it needs to be just one or two sentences. It needs to be just one or two crisp, clear sentences, because if it's too long, you're going to lose people.
Well, we're gonna disagree slightly on that. When you're trying to attract the attention from your readers, yes, you better have a really good headline. But as I advised Sam Pratt, and as he put into practice, when you have something, tell the whole story. So don't inundate people up front. But right. Yeah, absolutely, you need a bullet point, you need a headline. But when it's time to tell the story, tell the whole story, because now not everybody's going to want to read the whole thing, but the most interested and involved people will read the whole thing. So
the opposition
and the opposition too.
Yeah.
When they get off when they take the donut out of their mouth or get off their coffee break, they'll skim it in between meetings. That's just keep that image in mind. They may have all the resources in the world. They are not impressive people by any standard. They're well, I'm trying to think of a polite word. I won't even go there. But so that's your job, is to build an organization. What does that mean? Lots of members with whom you're communicating on a regular basis. Those people can then be a source of funds. They can also be a source of volunteers. Or paid. Somebody with a great talent who you might not otherwise even know exists. Because talent, this is all about talent. This is all about tapping into the best talent you can find. And that's part of what an organization does. It's open-ended. It's looking for edges. It's looking for resources. The other thing is your membership becomes a political force. In San Francisco, I believe we had 25,000 people signed a physical, petition. The local judge it rejected it anyway, but talk about being up against it. Yeah, well, I could tell stories about that, but you couldn't have been more. The political party that did the election fraud controlled the entire city, including the district attorney and the city attorney. So they were defending themselves. The other side hired every attorney in San Francisco so that we couldn't even hire an attorney. Okay,
wow.
That's what we were up against. So, but all that's irrelevant, because we had, and the other, as you point out, the other side will make ridiculous mistakes. In the case of San Francisco, the guy who we believed helped engineer the election fraud got caught handing to your former governor a suitcase with $400,000 cash. Now, and that sort of disrupted everything for him. So sometimes they'll shoot themselves in the foot. They did that many times in Hudson. And they certainly did that many times in New Orleans. So you got to be ready. And so part of it is to stay alive long enough. One of the things that Sam Pratt mentioned in a letter that he wrote says that
if you could tell our listeners who Sam Pratt is.
Oh, I thought you already did an interview with him.
I did do an interview with him, but
okay.
not everybody listening to this episode might have been familiar with, might have listened to that episode.
Very good. And this is another case that proves the point. One of the largest cement companies in the world, owned by one of the 100 richest families in the world, declared that they wanted to put North America's second largest coal-fired cement plant on the banks of the Hudson River in just on the next door to Hudson. Now, Hudson's a city, it's a town, there's people living there. You don't put oil refineries or chemical plants or cement plants, which are in the same class, near human habitation. You don't do it. But this company decided they were going to do it. They weren't going to scrub their emissions. They were going to burn coal, not natural gas. They wanted the right to burn tires, automobile tires, and medical waste to fuel their kilns. And they had every single local politician and news media person in their pocket. It was so bad to the point that in the early days, people were afraid to put signs up for fear their windows would be broken. Or if they were a business owner, their businesses would be boycotted. So starting behind the eight ball, I would say,
Well, okay, my listeners, I want to explain to you right at this moment when Mr. McCarthy just got finished saying we were kind of behind the eight ball, I would say, right at that moment, my internet went out completely due to a lightning strike. But even though this episode got aborted by the weather, I feel very strongly that this episode is the most important episode of the first season of Beat the Big Guys. And the reason it's so important is because Mr. McCarthy laid out a very clear, very concise set of guidelines right from the very beginning to beat the big guys that is also very uplifting and empowering. It was such good material that I'm going to recap it right now, and in just a couple of places, fill it in with some detail where Mr. McCarthy himself helped me get my organization off the ground. In Mr. McCarthy's words, he likes to use the word step. Step one, it's not hopeless. I cannot overstate how right he is about that. Even when you're up against what looks so powerful, in some cases a national organization, or an organization that has tons of money, like a cement manufacturer, it isn't hopeless. It isn't a done deal. And that's the first thing that you've got to get past, stop thinking that way. And just like Mr. McCarthy said, just push that to the side. Step two, in the beginning, it's okay to be just a few people. It's okay to start out with no particular resources. It's okay to start out with no particular advantages, because in time, those things will come. Your biggest advantage right from the beginning is you care. You care about what you're doing. And in some cases, it might be fighting for your lives or your health. So, it's okay in the beginning to start out small. Don't worry about that. Step three, build an organization. Well, what is an organization? It's people, it's members, it's supporters, it's participants, it's whatever you want to call them, but it's people. And it's also a great way to build credibility when you have people. When I started out sounding the alarm, it was just me and my 15-year-old son, Stanford. He just turned 15. So I wrote a mission statement, hold the Corps accountable, and my son created a website and a logo, which we are still using to this day. But then I realized, well, wait a minute, we need more than a website, and we need more than a mission statement if we want to earn any credibility. So we need members. And all I did was I crafted a 4 or 5 sentence petition to President Bush asking him to keep his promise and build the levees back bigger and stronger. And I put this petition on our website using Gmail, not using anything fancy like Rally Starter or MoveOn.org, just using Gmail, sent the website link to all our family and friends, asking them to add their name and email address to the petition and forward it to their family and friends. 200 people overnight signed up, and we're now on the map. So I cannot understate the value of, you need members. You don't need them on day one, but you need to develop members or an organization. As Mr. McCarthy would say, step 4, craft your message and repeat it over and over and over. In our case, it was hold the core accountable. Mr. McCarthy, I don't know whether he told me on the phone or in an email, but I clearly remember him saying, say it over and over and over again, and don't stop until people line up at your front door and tell you to stop. And I remember that to this day. And I'm still sending out the message over and over. Cannot be understated. And because part of this all is persistence. Step 5, in time, your members can become those resources that you might not have started with. They can become a source of funding. They can become a source of talent. You'll have all kinds of talent among your members, like artists or videographers or copywriters or photographers. And each and every one of them will have some sort of talent that they will be happy to share with you. So, but that comes with time, and you learn how to harness that. And step 6 is your members or supporters or participants, whatever you want to call them, can actually become a political force. They, with the power of their adding their name to a signature, can move mountains when the time is right. And I'll give you an example. On 2 days before Christmas, we put up a petition to the New York Times because we didn't like the way the New York Times characterized the flooding. And they said something kind of snippish like, well, we think the people of New Orleans would agree there was a hurricane, even though the hurricane isn't what caused the flooding in New Orleans. It was construction and design failure of levees, not a hurricane. But the New York Times was a little obnoxious about this. So 2 days before Christmas, we put out a petition to our members. 1,000 people signed that petition during the Christmas holiday. And so many people responded that the New York Times issued an editorial in response to what we were asking. We were asking them to stop saying Hurricane Katrina flooded New Orleans. It was levee failure. So the power of your members cannot be understated. So again, I think this was the most important episode of Beat the Big Guys. I would encourage you all to listen to it a second time, because the words of Mr. McCarthy are just so incredibly powerful. There were so many times that he kind of held my hand with my organization, levees.org, and was there for me whenever I felt unsure of what to do or nervous. And he was there the whole time. And this is the man to listen to. Again, thank you so much, Mr. McCarthy, for joining me. And I hope all of you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and like this episode. And don't forget, no matter who you are, you can beat the big guys.